soldiers here and there.
Nigerians encourage corruption, cites June 1st of the Punch newspaper.
David Mark says it's via dirt.
America's Nigerian Governor Forum calls for
Senator
Uzono Iberia's resignation.
says new PDP.
Page 2 of the Punch newspaper.
The dailies every day on Core TV News.
I'm joined this morning by legal practitioner Uzono to, of course, digest the dailies. Good morning, barrister.
Good morning, sir.
And thank you for finding time to join us today.
Thank you for having me.
I have the Vanguard, the Nation, the Guardian, as well as the Punch newspaper for review. Let's start with the Vanguard this morning. The top story here, Chibok girls still alive, says President Goodluck Jonathan. And the writers says federal government doing everything to return abducted girls alive. 2015 re-election tougher than 2011, he says, assures a PDP victory despite stiff opposition. The front page picture, quite interesting, is their Papa Oshodi madness. They say the agony continues. A tanker driver naps on the median of the blocked Papa Oshodi Expressway yesterday as motorists and residents continue to suffer activities of tank farms and full tankers on the nation's main route to Lagos seaports, just as hoodlums attack motorists trapped in the gridlock. Boko Haram kills 94 for refusing to join sect in Bornu. That's on page 6. Mismanagement, Nigeria's main problem, says Obasanjo. That's on page 9 of the Vanguard. Reps adopt report on Electoral Act amendment. You'll find details of that on page 8 of the Vanguard. Okay, let's see what Mr. and Mrs. asked this morning. What's the matter with you, woman? My friend, go and prepare the grass cutter soup for me. And the woman says, you, a gardener, wants to eat grass cutter. Come on, dear. Dog shouldn't eat dog. And then you have sports on the back page of the Vanguard as well. Robbers attack Kano Pillar players. Gambo Mohammed, 4 others shot. And Modi grateful to God. They stole our phones, money, injured players in hospital. We brought you details of the story on our primetime news yesterday. Barrister, let's start with this big one. Chibok girls still alive. Does it not sound to you like the same story after 326 days of their abduction? The same story the military says that we know where they are, but we can't go there.
It's about intel. The president has all of the information he needs on his table. So the president is well placed to tell us whether the girls are alive or not. You remember before now, there were speculations whether they were at Sambisa Forest. And now that Sambisa Forest is being combed, you discover that they are not there. So apparently you can see that much of what we've heard over the past days, the number of days we've been counting, that the girls have not been brought back, have to do with propaganda. And so, but we must understand that the president knows much more than we do because of the number of intel.
Don't forget that he also gave the reason why he said that, and many are beginning to question the logical viability of that. He says that the Boko Haram insurgent leader would have released a video showing how the girls were murdered if they were not alive. Do you think that's logical enough to conclude that the girls are still alive?
It's logical enough to conclude, yes.
Has Boko Haram shown to us everybody they've ever killed?
But you also remember that that's their modus operandi, just as you have ISIS doing out there. So the president is right in that summation. But by and large, we pray that the girls are alive and that they will be brought back. Because it's something of an international appeal. So everybody's careful and everybody wants to use the best practice in terms of deployment of military and then the way the military goes about trying to recover them so that we don't have collateral damage at the end of the day. But by and large, I want to appreciate our military for the wonderful work they are doing. It's not easy, but a few weeks that have gone by, we've seen how powerful the military could be when everything is in place. So we hope that everything will be brought under control and that Nigeria will be retaken from the hands of the terrorists.
Are you baffled that much of the accolade is going to Chadian army rather than to Nigerian military, so to say?
Well, you know that terrorism, what we have in Nigeria has to do with cross-border movement of the terrorists. Terrorists will run from one point to another when you try to get them on this point. But with the AU coming in to give them that alignment that they need. So if you are running to Chad, you know you're going to face an issue there. If you are running to Cameroon, if you are running to Niger. So all of those Niger, Chad Basin countries can work as a team, and then they'll be able to contain it. Because the damage is not only in Nigeria. You also hear in Cameroon, you also hear also in Chad. So it's important. It has nothing to do with whether the Nigerian military was capable or whether they could handle the issue. The issue was that these people are, the pattern they use in fighting is not the conventional one. So we must acknowledge that first, and then we can now move from there onward.
It's all right. Let's find out what the top stories are today. On the front page of the Nation newspaper, Boko Haram using Chibok girls as Shekau's shield. Abducted schoolgirls alive, says Mr. President. And the top one here, somewhere below the Nation newspaper, the leader Nigeria needs now by Obasanjo, ex-CDS to military, shun politics, and Oyego Tinubu, others hail ex-president at 78. We are about 180 million now. Our brothers and sisters in West Africa are worried. If 500,000 Nigerians go to Republic of Benin, we will overwhelm them. If 2 million go to Ghana, that's a big problem. Even Britain is worried. Let's check all the stories on the front page of the Nation. It will be tougher to win election now, says Jonathan. PDP's rejection of card reader proves us right, says APC. And Buhari, my jailer, has become our hope, says lawyer. PDP backs First Lady's statement on Buhari. Let's start with the issues shrouding the use of card readers. You also recall that we showed earlier a statement by the Niger State Governor Babangida Aliyu. It looks as if the body movement from the PDP is that of being kind of skeptical about this new innovation. What are your thoughts along that line?
I'm also skeptical. And that's got nothing to do with the party being skeptical. It's about the perception of Nigerians in general. I would have felt that as at this point we are not yet ready to use this innovation that is coming. So why don't we push it further and then allow those who have TVCs to also vote, just as you have those who have PVCs to vote. So there won't be issues as to credibility or disenfranchisement.
That automatically will mean that there wouldn't be an improvement from what we had in 2011, from what is going to happen also in 2015. Because many are also considering the integrity of the electoral process.
And that's where the rubber really meets the road. The problem is when you have millions of people unable to get their PVCs, not of their own making, but they go there and they stay from morning till night and nobody is there to give them their PVCs. Those are grave issues. Now, when you have issues like that, you have to think of justice. These are the weightier matters. When you talk about justice, you're not just talking about a party feeling good that what is suggested was being taken. It's about the general perception of what you are doing, especially what citizens will feel have been done and how hard done by they were because they couldn't access what they ought to have accessed. So you have to consider all of those factors, and when you put them into one, you should be able to know what to do. Before now, I saw INEC saying that they were ready to go on with the election, up until the 11th hour, where they now say, okay, well, because of the issues in the Northeast, we'll have to shift it up to March 28th. So you see, those are the issues we are talking about. People are crying on this other side that there's a problem here, and then people are happy on this other side that let's go ahead, because they felt technically they will have an edge over the other. But that ought not to be. There ought to be fairness, there ought to be justice. Once we ignore those matters, then we'll start having issues on our hands. And we have to avoid the issues that we're talking about.
Does INEC has the legal backing to use the electronic card reader for this election?
they do have, they are the moderators of the elections. They are the ones to conduct it. They could give certain parameters that they want to abide by and what they want to do, technical innovation. And once the Senate approves, the House of Reps approves, and money have been appropriated for that purpose, yes, they could go ahead. It's lawful, it's legal. But the issue now is the final outcome of what you're doing.
The INEC principal at the floor of the Senate talked about these breeders having passed some tests, and also INEC is embarking on a test run across the 6 geopolitical zones starting from March 7. Aren't these efforts enough probably to douse the tension and the fears that the card reader eventually might not work?
Well, if you consider what Babangida Aliyu said, the governor, it's strong. And during the test period, we'll be able to know how efficient it is and how, if people are standing to exercise their franchise, how fast it will be to attend to all of those people. Those are the key things. Now, if it's going to be efficient just as when you want to register your SIM card, then we are fine. But the problem now is the rural areas, the battery chargers and all of that. If those things are in place and those things are working, and you've been able to give people their PVCs, then we are good to go.
It's all right.
Yes.
Let's move away from the nation and go to the Guardian. No surprise in security circles over ex-CJN son joining ISIS. The security and intelligence circles in Abuja are not surprised about the news that one of the sons of a former Chief Justice of Nigeria, names withheld, has allegedly joined the Islamic terrorist group of the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. For them, it's been long in coming, as the group has targeted children of affluent Nigerians who they believe are not favorably disposed to the modus operandi of the Boko Haram Islamist group fighting in northeast part of the country. 839 health workers affected by Ebola, that's on page 2. Deportation, Nigerian lesbian in UK to no fate in 3 weeks, that's on page 12. Owando settles loan for ConocoPhillips acquisition, that's on page 20. And why politicians' health suffer as election campaigns intensify. Well, it's day 326 after the abduction of over 200 Chibok girls, and the Guardian is saying, bring back our girls. You recall that the National Orientation Agency came up with some sort of warning for Nigerians, especially those who have their children outside the country, to talk to them, and because they are becoming more vulnerable to all this ongoing international terrorism. How did we get to this point? Because it's not the first time we're hearing Nigerians, actively participating. You recall the Nigerian in London who almost blew himself up also in an airplane. Would you call this one of the results of the moral decadence that Nigeria is experiencing?
I think principally we cannot blame the parents. That's what we have to. Because at some point in life, a person must take responsibility for his own life. His choices are his, and he has to own them.
The quality of choices we make, isn't it a function of the kind of foundation we have with the family and, of course, our parents?
But you know that evil communication corrupts good manners. And so even if a person has a very good upbringing, just influences from his peers and all of that may make him balk. And it may take to something that was totally alien to what he had been trained and groomed to project. So those are the things we have to consider. It has nothing to do with the CGN, because if it had to do with the ex-CGN rather, it will have manifested earlier before now. But these are trends, and when people are exposed on the outside, they might be affected severally. So environment matters, and then the associations the person keeps. So I think the child would have gone into an association that is not healthy, and then at the end of the day, some people get brainwashed, and then they just join something that was totally out of what they ever imagined they would join. So that's just the bottom line. We've had series of that, including Abdul Mutalab and all of that, trying to blow up a plane with facilities in its underpants and all of that. And then we also had the issues in London where some UK-born Nigerians who are involved and all of that. So I think these are pockets of instances where something just went wrong.
Can we link this reality to the expectation of Nigerians of their politicians? Because in other developed climes, some sort of scrutiny is being made to find out how relevant these people are to their families, how effective a father or mother they have been, how qualitative, the life of their children really is before giving them the opportunity to lead. Unlike those places, a president, for instance, can have as many wives as possible, as many children as possible, as many extramarital affairs as possible, and the electorate doesn't seem to care.
It's about our cultural milieu, what we have prevailing here. But the more influential a person is, the more qualitative education he can afford to give his children. It doesn't matter how much it costs him. So those quality education that he provides for the children has several benefits. Etiquettes are taught and all of that, and the child imbibes those morals. Now, if the child goes out of his way, then something will have led to that. Either the child wanted attention and didn't get it, and all of those little issues. But by and large, I feel that these kind of matters will have to do essentially if the child was not with the parents but was outside, where it was exposed to these extremist measures or extremist brainwashing and all of that, then the child will likely take to those tendencies, not because, like I did say.
What I'm trying to say is that shouldn't how a man rules his family also be considered before such a person is given an opportunity to lead in a bigger capacity like politics?
Yes, society will always ascribe that as very important. But if you listen to the parable of the prodigal son, you discover that even the man that was so wealthy and had everything, a child just suddenly decided that the father should give him everything. And then, according to the parable, went far, to a far country, and then wasted everything, and then lived a kind of life that was not very befitting for the child that came from such a home. So you have such templates running. And most of the times, because of you want to have political credibility, you want to score political points, people tend to look at the family so that issues will not arise. It doesn't mean that some people in the family may not be dysfunctional. Sometimes they are. It happens like that, It doesn't mean that there are no social deviants in the family. But by and large, there's a fabric of moral sin that tend to hold those children together. That tend to say, you are the son of this person. I want you to behave like this, behave like this. And those things tend to push them. But once they get out of that circle of influence, there are other influences, pressures, and all they'll face.
That's all right. Let's find details from the Nigerian Punch this morning. Chibok Girls Alive, says Jonathan. Boko Haram kills 68 in Borno State. You get details of that story on pages 7 and 9 of the Punch. Budget reps proposed $54 oil benchmark. That's on page 27. That's about $2 higher than what the Senate earlier proposed, I believe. And Falano takes over suit. Is it higher or lower? I think you should find that there. Falano takes over suit seeking Imbu's removal. That's on page 9. And police open fire on protesting UTME candidates. That's on page 4 of the Punch. National Assembly slashes own budget by 25%. Page 13. Security agencies probing Nigerians with ISIS link. That's on page 18. And Tanzanian club wants Keshi. You get details of that on page 54 of the Punch. Now, interesting front page picture, Barrister. They say in the Center of Excellence, pupils of Alawuro and St. Michael's Primary Schools in Ojo, Lagos, on the way home. That picture was taken on Thursday. What exactly would you have in your mind when you saw that picture?
What else should I have in my mind? I think development is progressive. We've seen the governor has done a lot in different portions of Lagos, and it's gradual. You understand? So that's what I feel. It doesn't mean that part has been abandoned. sometimes some parts where people live, they were not supposed to live there. But they just developed it and started, So, but if you check in the master plan of the state, you'll be able to know where people ought to live and where people ought not to live. So when people get to certain points, and then the government comes in and says, no, we'll have to take this place because it's not part of this. This is what we have in mind for these people will say, why, and all of that. So those are the issues that we also have to consider. Rather than finding faults with the government, we also should consider that some people just will not listen when they say, don't go here because you're not supposed to be there. But nonetheless, life should be good across board. We should be able to accommodate certain instances like this.
We have come to believe over time that looks as if the challenges being faced by Nigeria and Nigerians seem to, in and of itself, overwhelms even leadership. Is there a situation whereby a government cannot touch every area within a specified tenure, or it's just a situation that we have been made to believe over time?
Okay, I'd rather approach it this way. I feel the local government councils or the LCDs should have a level of responsibility on their hands. We cannot put everything on the table of the governor because the governor administers over a wide area. Just the same way we cannot put all the faults on the president because you have governors, sitting governors who are supposed to man certain different aspects. And then you also have local government. Now all of these people collect allocations. The issue is what have you been doing with your own allocation. So when you get to certain local governments like Amowo Dofin, certain other Ikoyi and all of that, you see that people are actually working. The mainland and all of that. So we expect the frontiers of those developmental efforts to spread across the state.
Does it not
Getting
baffle
to
you
places
that
like Shomolu, Bariga and all of that?
at the point where people are discussing local government autonomy, even some state governments, some state House of Assembly are throwing that out of the window?
And that's our headache, because I felt the local government should have autonomy. If you have to give the states money and then the state governor has to sit on the money, it can frustrate the efforts of even the local government that intended to work. So that's where the problem really is. Now, if you allow them access the money, then you can put them under scrutiny and say, you collected this amount of money, what did you do with it? Just like the EFCC can look at certain financial transactions and query them. So you can have a level of query. Nobody covers anybody anymore because we can see how much you got and what have you done with it at the end of the day.
Let's
So
wrap
we
up this
expect
segment this way. In the course of the week, there's been lots of counter accusations and counter accusations between the PDP and the APC. It got to a point whereby they seem to have taken it legally. You hear the APC suing the PDP for certain statements that they made, and then PDP suing back. At the time, even the former governor of Lagos State is saying, I will sue AIT, and then AIT is suing back and all of that. As the rule of law, or let me say, have we been able to define legally that thin line between freedom of expression and what is now being called hate speeches and personal attack and, character assassination and the likes?
Yes, we've been able to come to that point where we can say, okay, there's freedom of speech, freedom of information, but the consequences are entirely yours. So if you own those words and you mouth them, you also take responsibility for what comes out of your expression. The freedom of expression it's so wide. You can express yourself in a dance, in speeches, in poetry and all of that. Now if you choose to defame somebody else while trying to express the way you feel or your perception about that person, then if the person feels like suing you, then he will sue. Defamation, it's like we say in law, it could be criminal and it could also be civil. Sometimes it could be civil and criminal, but you decide to follow it civil. And money is always the expression of the extent of damage you feel you suffered. So if the person decides that 20 billion is worth more than 20 billion, but this damage you have caused to his person's reputation, it can be assessed at 20 billion. Then he sues. But I think it's a good development in the sense that people no longer try to solve the problem by themselves, but they are recognizing that there are institutions that they could meet and then try to channel their grievances and have them resolved. That's the basic thing that should make us.
Do they eventually get justice, given the slow manner with which justice is served in Nigeria?
Yeah, they get justice. I think I know that currently there are some cases that have been decided. For instance, whether the president is eligible or should contest the election. And that may held that he has the right to contest. Because you cannot go against the spirit and letter of the Constitution and expect that whatever you've done, if there were any, has legal force as against the provisions of the Constitution. So that's a good step for us, and it's helping us to develop in terms of our law.
Well, how does this really work? Because at one point we have freedom of speech, where you probably can say anything you feel like saying. At the other hand, they say they passed the Freedom of Information Bill, where, for instance, as a journalist, you can decide not to disclose your source. Then at what point do someone sue me for what I say, even when I say I do not have the, I do not necessarily have to tell you where I got that information from?
Okay, we are now making it clearer. For journalists, for certain professionals, facts are sacred. So if you get your facts right, no problem. If anybody sues the journalist for having disclosed certain facts, then he has the defense of justification. Justification means that these facts are concrete, these are the areas, these are the department that published it, and they have reasons to believe that what they've published is correct, so we broadcasted it. Also, we made them known. So once this is done, you don't have a problem with that. But when the expression is baseless, for instance, I just sit down now, I just wake up and say something against Tinubu, for instance, which is not correct, which is not factual, and which is not true, then he has a basis to say you are wrong. Because by doing that, I've tarnished his credibility. I've damaged his reputation in the public space.
Are you saying legally such person can be compelled to disclose the source where you got that information from?
If the facts are sacred, like I said, in the heart of the person who feels he has been defamed, he knows that this is true.
Okay.
And if he still goes ahead to sue, you can also counter sue. You understand that what you are bringing before the court is malicious because I have said the truth. And you can also, if the person is claiming 20 billion, you can claim 40 billion. So there's no problem. You are not losing. It's a legal process, and that's how it's done.
But how will you describe the level of engagement that we have seen thus far between the two major parties, especially ahead the rescheduled election?
Thank you for bringing that in. I felt that if the election had gone on the 14th of February, taking away the Lovers' Day, in quotes, we would have had crisis on our hands. I just felt so because I felt the atmosphere was very heavy, and there are a lot of inciting statements that have been made, and the atmosphere was supercharged.
But hasn't the inciting statement gone to a totally new dimension now?
But you discover that the weight, the sting of death that was in it had been taken off. Now it's just ordinary words. Before it was supercharged, and all of these elements that we have that surrounds our politics were already at play. Religion, ethnicity, tribe, and all of that. They were already at play, and we could feel that something bad was going to happen. And so people were leaving their stations. People in the north were already traveling. So technically, they had been disenfranchised. And so a whole lot of things were at play at that time. But with the shifting, there's now hope. Nobody feels that if my candidate does not win, the heavens will fall anymore. At least you can feel it within you. I feel it like that. Nobody bothers anymore. They just watch, okay, the campaigning, okay, this person is going. And the point say, well, when the election comes, we'll just do it. Anybody that wins, I'm tired. You understand? So that is good for us. And I must appreciate whoever took the initiative to shift the date to March 28th. It was a good deal that we could have.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Welcome to Call Digest.
Good morning, Dr. It's Salisu from Niger State.
All right, Salisu from Niger, how are you today?
Fine, sir.
Please go ahead with your contribution.
Thank you this morning. You see, this issue of card reader. The card reader issue, people take it as the people take it too far. But Nigeria, as a developing country, cannot be taken backward. Look at Ghana, for instance. It's more that they just wake up in the morning and bring the issue of card reader, and they do a successful election. I want to talk to your guests because we talk about card reader that the opposition are trying to take advantage of card reader and win the election. 2011 election. If you were in opposition party, how will you feel? You use your resources to contest election and win. And some people are using Bible to write a figure in election. Now this opposition seen it as an opportunity for them in the issue of card reader for free and fair. Because these two parties have spent a lot to see that they win election. Now some strong parties see that they will go down and they see against the card reader. Before the guy went to do this card reader, he know what the consequence that will come upon it, even in the rural area. He know how they will tackle the whole problem. So they should allow card reader to move on. My second talk here is about word. Party making word, abusing all these things. All those ones, sometimes I laugh over it. Because even in America, it happens, but Nigeria is worse. So we should show maturity in our politics so that we can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Salisu, calling in from Mina in Niger State.
Can I clear the air on that?
Please go
I
ahead.
think you got me wrong. I said that if the testing is okay and we can demonstrate that all of the people standing on the queue can vote and it will be fast, then we are good
But
to go.
even then, we're united, based on the fact that we want a better electoral system.
Yes.
We want an election where people can indeed say, yes, our votes have counted. Children would also be united and not be talking about probably scrapping card readers, but to bring in ideas now to ensure that the system does not flop.
If you want a good election that you can be proud of, you go beyond the electronic, the card reader and issue. You go into e-voting. People are not even thinking about that. We've registered on our SIMs. We've registered national ID card. What stops us from using our national ID card? I just vote.
Just a minute. Let's take this call. Hello, good morning.
I want to contribute to the program.
What's your name and where are you calling from?
Uzono.
What's your name?
I'm Uzono.
Biodun from Oshogo. Please go ahead with your contribution.
Yes. I'm Uzono, calling from Uzono.
All right, go ahead with your contribution, Biodun.
Well, I want to congratulate you. The person that is gathered is very intelligent. Yes. Well, about the card reader, I'm congratulating the person on the discussion. He's very fair, intelligent, and he's not, very...
I'm afraid we lost that. But I think we were saying that you are not partisan in your contribution. You have to call us back and ensure that you turn down the volume of your TV set when you do that. Instead of going to court now, like some people are, some lesser parties in court already are in court to talk about the further postponement of the election, especially in Northeast Zone. Why shouldn't all of us join hands together at this time, bring in lofty ideas, and ensure that INEC does what it's supposed to do so that we can have a better result, that we all will be proud of in 2015?
Yes, I think at this point, we have to realize, like the president keeps saying, that if another person wins the election, he will hand over and go. It's not a do or die. We have to appreciate that. But trying to impute certain things into the character of Mr. President, it's not going to help us, because it will make other people to react differently. So what we have to do is to just believe that we are a nation and that we are pursuing a particular target. Now, I don't believe that the election will be shifted any further because it will affect the timetable for handing over. There has to be a timeline within which the handover can take place. That's what the Constitution contemplates. So we can't go further than that 28. So that is already stable. But we have to do something that we can look back in time and say that in 2015 we were able to conduct an election that was even more credible than 2011. Even though 2011 was good, we can do something better and we need to progress. So the problem actually is about the Nigerian people, the way we think and the way we do things, the way we react. There's so much of assumptions flying everywhere. The opposition is supposing that the president wants to do this, the president wants, and they're imputing it, which is wrong. You watch, when it happens, you say, he said, you shouldn't have done this, you should have done this, or you challenge it in the court of law. If you keep beating the drum of dissonance, soon the dance step will change. And that's what we have to be careful about. That's why, as far as I'm concerned, the Nigerian social space is a social space that benefits the journalists, especially the print journalists. Every day you see some powerful headlines, you just be wondering, what type of country is this? Just pick your newspaper from 2011 till date, check each day. In this world that Nigeria sells in terms of screaming headlines. It has always been like that. So when will we as a people change our attitude towards the way we react to certain things?
Thank you very much for joining us today on Core Digest. Uzono is a Lagos-based legal practitioner who joined us today on Core Digest. We hope to have you on the show subsequently.
Thank you, sir.
We'll take another break now and we'll be back with some other issues for discussion. Stick around, don't go away.
It's another beautiful and exciting moment.
Welcome to Political Arena, the most detailed and incisive political show.
You will see all sorts of politicians, even those who cannot manage their homes. We tell you to let them manage your lives. Look well, shine your eyes.
So stomach infrastructure is a way of life. Even if I cannot do anything, and I continue to help your stomach so that your life will keep on going. Stomach infrastructure is a way of life for me.
I should ask you, what is going right in this country? Is it education? Is it security? Infrastructure? Is it healthcare? What is going right? Absolutely nothing.
We mean to win Lagos. PDP is going to win Lagos in 2015.
INEC has colluded with the presidency, the opposing party, to rig this election from the data to the end.
The 2015 general elections must be the best.
The good, bad, ugly, and beautiful sides of the Nigerian political system. Join me every Sunday at 9:15 p.m. on Core TV News.